squat kind of technique video. Make sure you watch part 1 if you haven't. We talk about the whole setup. Again, the setup is incredibly important. If you're not set up correctly, the squat's probably not going to go as well as it probably should. So to kind of have my setup, again, I'll start with my index finger on this little knurling here. I'll go with a false grip so I can work on rotating my elbows underneath as much as possible to help maintain my upright posture. So I'm here, I'll kind of shove this bar against the rack so again I can get tight. We'll also talk about external rotation in this video. I'm going to create external rotation at my elbow that will help me swing underneath the bar. Plant with my left foot and get incredibly tight. Again, you'll see how my elbows swing underneath here. Set this foot, then I'll just pop up. Again, let the weight stabilize for a few seconds. I'll go a little bit quicker on the walkout this time so it's a little more natural. 1, 2, 3. That's about what my foot position is. So that's about the whole entire setup there. So now I'll talk about 2 kind of key things you'll need to worry about before you even start squatting. The first one is going to be a basic brace sequence. So your glutes should be squeezed as hard as possible here. A lot of people have the fault of being hyperextended. So a lot of people have the mistake of being overextended. They'll have a lot of looseness in their lower back. So they kind of have this posture here where their butt's stuck out and they're hyperextended in their lumbar spine. This helps people hit depth sometimes because they reach really, really far with their back. That can also cause some severe kind of pain in your lower back and you're pretty much just searching for stability. So what can help that is actually, instead of being in this hyperextended position, to squeeze your glutes as hard as you possibly can to start the squat. And you'll notice if you squeeze your glutes, it's almost impossible for me in this position to try to hyperextend. Obviously this is really a natural pattern. So you can squeeze your glutes and kind of flex your pelvis as hard as you possibly can. It's almost impossible to hyperextend your lower back. So that's kind of the first cue you want to do. After you get your feet set, squeeze your glutes as hard as you possibly can, and then you want to make sure you're bracing. So the easiest way I can tell people to brace is try to get a 360-degree expansion. So you need to breathe into your stomach really big. So if you look at my stomach, it'll go, and you can kind of press air against your belly button. You can even kind of get some movement against your lower back, some air in your lower back. So the easiest way people can do that is take a big breath in. Again, try not to have it in your chest. And if I breathe really big into my chest, if I do this, you'll see again I'm kind of hyperextended at my lower back. So take a big breath into your stomach. Actually press your tongue against the top of your front 2 teeth. So if I'm doing this, that will help me stay tight in the squat. It closes your epiglottis and it allows you just to keep your air in. So again, squeezing my glutes as hard as I can before I squat. I'll take a really big breath in and close my mouth, pressing my tongue on the top of my front 2 teeth, and then I'm going to squat. Okay, before we actually squat, we're going to talk about something called external rotation. It's a pretty simple concept for just kind of thinking about stabilizing either your shoulder or your hip, even your knee somewhat. It's important to learn the importance of external rotation. It's a lot of importance. Early on as you can, because it's going to kind of transfer over to almost all the lifts. So if you can learn how to do it in a squat or a bench press, pretty much taken care of. So we'll talk about kind of external rotation, stabilizing the hip in a squat. So if this is kind of my normal squat position, and I have no external rotation at my knee and my hip, I'm probably just going to end up throwing my knees a little bit forward, sitting back a little bit, and what can happen is my knee can actually almost come inside of my tibia, and then that can kind of cause some ACL problems, and it's just not a really strong position for your leg to be in. So instead, after you plant your feet here, you want to think about screwing your foot into the ground. That will create external rotation at your knee and your hip, and allow your knee to kind of fall over the middle of your foot as you squat. So if you look at my knee position here, my feet really aren't moving, but as I screw my feet in the ground, you can see how much movement at my knee there is. So again, if I'm just going to squat without external rotation here, and then now if I screw my feet into the ground, you see my knees kind of falling out more in line with the middle of my foot. And now that I come down, I'm in a much different position with my knee kind of going out over the middle of my foot or even a little bit outside of my foot. So we're actually going to squat this time. Again, we're talking about index finger on the knurlings here, thinking about getting external rotation on the bar. I'm going to squeeze the bar, throw my elbows underneath, set my feet, pop up, let the weight stabilize, 3 steps back, 1, 2, 3, Now that we just talked about creating external rotation at my foot, which will go to my knee and my hip. So again, you can't really see it here without lifting up my shorts, but I'm going to think about screwing my feet into the ground. That'll help me get more stabilized. I'll also talk about the bracing. So my glutes are squeezed hard here. I'm going to kind of brace my stomach, my tongue on the top of my mouth, front two teeth. So here. So that's kind of a basic squat motion. You'll see how my hips are not coming incredibly far back and my knees are not coming incredibly far forward. You want to synergistically let your knees fall forward and push your hips back. So again, if you're not getting any bend at your knee, what's going to happen is this bar is going to get way too far in front of you. So if I get almost no bend in my knee, I really try to hip hinge a squat like this. You're seeing how far this bar is getting out in front of me and how horizontal my spine is. Kind of the other contrast of that, if I'm getting no kind of hip position, unless I have exceptional ankle mobility, my heels will kind of lift off the ground. So if I go over knee dominant here, I'm going to only bend at my knee, and to reach depth, I'm going to have to come on my toes, which is also not what we're wanting. We want the pressure to be kind of in the middle of our foot, maybe a little bit even further back on our heel. My torso angle is going to be dictated based on my bar position. So if you're going to have an efficient squat, the bar should be traveling over the middle of your foot for most of the lift. Again, that's kind of you learn that in basic 3rd grade geometry, maybe 5th grade geometry. That a straight line is the easiest path to 2 points. So again, if I'm having a lot of forward and backward motion as I'm squatting, that's not as efficient as a straight up and down pattern, okay? So again, if the bar is lower, it kind of makes sense. It's lower on my back, I'm gonna have a greater torso angle, a more horizontal angle that is, to keep this bar in the middle of my foot. If the bar was higher, or if I'm doing a front squat, I'm gonna have to remain more upright torso, have more forward knee travel, have it over the middle of my foot. So as we'll demo the low bar squat first, try to pay attention to this bar, and I'll try to have this go perfectly straight up and down, and you'll see that it should be over the middle of my foot most of the entire rep. So again, squeeze my glutes, big breath in, and pop with the knee, one more rep. So again, you see this bar shouldn't have too much movement here, and it definitely shouldn't be going back. Because you're usually going to see problems with people leaning too much forward. So again, if I'm not bending my knees enough, it can look something like this, where the bar, now this bar is not over the middle of my foot, so as I squat this up, I have to actually press it here, and I have to extend with my back again. So you want to try to stay as upright as possible. We'll do one more good rep for you guys. Again, hopefully this bar is going straight up and down. So if I'm here, my glutes, big breath. Okay, so we talked about in the intro, maybe the first few parts about my foot position when I'm going from a low bar to a high bar. So now that I'm in a high bar position here, I'd probably make the adjustment to bring my feet in a little bit. So right now I'm about shoulder width, but the actual squat motion should change slightly. So again, with this bar being a little bit different position, a low bar here, I'm gonna have a more horizontal lean to have the bar in the middle of my foot. Now that the bar is higher, I cannot have that horizontal lean as much to keep the bar in the middle of my foot. So that means I'll need to have my knees fall forward a little bit more. So again, my feet, remember to have extra rotation at your feet so your knees can fall out. Bracing my core, squeezing my glutes, big breath in. And you see at the bottom of the squat, it should be about over the middle of my foot. And if you're gonna pause the low bar video, you should see that my knees aren't, I can do this, my knees are not this far forward, but if I'm doing, I have to allow this knee travel to be in a good position. Okay, so the last thing we'll talk about, guys, I think this is really important for people to get, is the speed of the descent. So what I mean, the descent is to how fast you're going to fall down. This is definitely a personal thing. Some people like to almost dive bomb, where they're going to almost let themselves completely fall. So again, squeeze your glutes, big breath, and then really quick. And then come up really quick. Some people like to get a little bit slower descent. So it may look something like this, maybe 3 or 4 seconds. Squeeze your glutes, big breath. But either time, you're gonna see that you're coming up as quickly as possible. So you never, regardless of your descent, you never want to purposely go slow. You never want to come here and then think about coming up slow. You want to move this bar, so again, this bar is maybe 5% by 1 rep max. You want to move this bar as quickly as you would move 500 pounds. Just get in the habit of moving as quickly as possible on the concentric or the up part of this motion. But it's important for most people to not go too slow on their descent, because you can see on a squat you'll have some sort of reflex out of the bottom. But if I'm going too slow, like a 5-6 second negative, I'm just going really slow, it gets rid of almost any reflex and rebounding out of the hole. Kind of the other contrast of that, if you're going too quickly, you kind of lose control if I just kind of dive bomb this and I'm not tight in the bottom of the squat. So you want to find a speed that's going to be comfortable for you, but also give you enough speed that you're not going to have no rebound out of the hole. So for me, my kind of real squat speed would look something like this. So that's something that allows me to be in control, but also gets a good rebound out of the hole. If you've never done pause squats before, or actually pausing in the hole, you'll notice how big of an influence the reflex can have when you don't have it. So again, don't go too slow. Too slow is going to be different for a lot of people. But don't go too slow because you won't have any rebound. Don't go too quickly because you might kind of lose any kind of good form and technique there. So kind of play with it and find what's the best speed for you. Also really important, make sure you're moving the bar on the upward portion as fast as you possibly can. 45 pounds, 95 pounds, 500 pounds, that should all be going up as quickly as you can.